Dorothy Day refused to participate in 1955 against these civil defense drills, and she went to jail in 1955. She went to jail again in 56, went to jail again in 57, 58, 59, 60, and 61 before we finally ended this. Yes.
Describe what a civil defense drill was in 1954 for the whole city of New York. Wasn't everyone in the city supposed to go in underground?
Yes.
8 million people? Was that really, did that
Yeah.
really happen?
And I love what David McReynolds, you knew David McReynolds? Yes. Great man, I love what he had to say about that. So we had a great program here for our safety. We could go into the subway systems, or in the schools, you could pick out a school that had a little sign on it, and you'd go in there and be safe. But David McReynolds, they had a great, the Empire State Building was brilliant. All those from the 57th floor up to the 57th would go to the basement. And all those on top of the would come down to the 47th floor, I think it was. So they would be at the 47th, because the 47th floor, as he would say, it was safe, during a nuclear attack. So, anyway, yeah, it's pretty wild, but yes, everyone had to clear the streets. Everyone, no one could drive cars. Every car had to pull over for a couple of hours of the day. Yes, everyone. No one could be on the street.
New York City stopped.
And Dorothy Day was one of the first ones who'd say, this is absolutely absurd. This is, just wrong thinking. And over your shoulder, I'm looking at Carmen Trotta, who just spent a couple of years in jail thank you, your boat sailed by the Kings Bay Naval Base. And Carmen was one of the Kings Bay Plowshares. And we have several people who were on the support team for that great action. So, let's go back to 1958. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, this is kind of an announcement that was put out in the February 58 issue of the Worker. I don't know if it's really just a press release that they copied or if someone wrote it up, but it's not signed, so we don't know who wrote it. We assume the uncredited things are by Dorothy Day, but no one is really sure. But I think this is taken from a leaflet or an announcement. So it says to stop atomic tests in the Pacific. The Golden Rule sailboat is protesting these tests, leaving February 9th from San Pedro Harbor for Hawaii, Wake Island, and the restricted area in the Marshall Islands, where the tests are scheduled in April. 4 Quakers, Bert Bigelow, former commander in the Navy, Bill Huntington, architect and boatsman, George Willoughby, head of the Central Committee for Conscientious Objectors, and David Gale, a young pacifist, are the crew of this 30-foot ketch with 500 feet of sail and a small 24-horsepower auxiliary motor. President Eisenhower and other authorities were informed of this voyage ahead of any press release. The crew members took part in opposing of the tests at the Nevada last summer. Dorothy Day and I are on the Committee for Nonviolent Action Against Nuclear Weapons, and I have met weekly with the steering committee. So I guess it's not by Dorothy Day, but we don't know who wrote it. We are also planning protests in Florida, Wyoming, Nevada, or Washington in April, as we find advisable to correspond with our comrades in the Golden Rule on the high seas. As the Boston Pilot said editorially in 1955, the greatest single act of human destruction in the history of the world must be placed on our doorstep. And we did it a second time at Nagasaki the next day, as if to show it was no accident. The supreme tragedy of this moment is that we still refuse to strike our breast and acknowledge our sin. We cannot buy back our innocence with all the gold in Fort Knox. Guilt must be washed away in penitence. This is what we are doing. Penance while on the Golden Rule at sea, and penance in our civil disobedience, fasting and picketing the continued testing of atomic weapons. if Admiral A.A. Burke, Chief of Naval Operations, can see the possibility, quote, which we have got to learn to live with, of some madman pressing the button, and he will wipe out the Northern Hemisphere, end quote, then certainly every pacifist or pacifist sympathizer should oppose all of these atomic preparations for war, misnamed defense. We ask your support to finance this voyage. Send contributions, small or large, to Walter Longstreth, Treasurer, 2006 Walnut Street, Philadelphia, 3 PA. I don't know if that was the address of AFSC or the Friends in Philadelphia. But that was just an announcement before the ship sailed. And then there's a brief report in March issue, which starts off with a strange kind of, like it was an opinion piece, I think, in the Village Voice, written by Amos Vogel. I have no idea who he was. Does anybody know that name? Well, this is the opinion piece, and then there's a comment, again written after it, without being signed. So it's titled, Guilt Takes a Holiday. Seen in such a context, the apparently nonsensical, unrealistic, impotent, and meaningless act of four oddballs driving a boat into the forbidden area reserved for the forthcoming H-bomb test emerges as a glorious reaffirmation of individual responsibility, of saying yes to being a human being, of at least making an infinitesimal protest. It is an act of absurd moral splendor and self-destruction that blinds the eye of those who remain behind. Or are we prepared to give up our jobs, our analyses, the smiles of our children, the expectations of our tomorrows, to permit ourselves to be the first ones to be radiated? Are we prepared to direct our own schooners, yachts, yes, even rowboats, into the same unpredictable channels? And that was by Amos Vogel in the Village Voice on February 26, 1958. And then the comment after that was, the Golden Rule was damaged at 700 miles at sea in one of the worst storms in many years. The ketch had to return to San Pedro for repairs. A new member of the crew who has had sea experience will sail with the boat March 20th. I'm pretty sure that would have been Jim Peck, whom many of you knew.
That was Orion Sherwood.
Oh, it wasn't
Orion Sherwood.
Jim Peck.
Jim
Flew to
Peck.
Hawaii.
Jim Peck came in Hawaii when they made their second attempt out of Honolulu.
Okay, and then repairs on the vessel will cost $2,000, but the crew is determined to make their witness against atomic terror in the Pacific. CW readers can watch the radio and press for news and help with contributions to be sent to, again, Walter Langstreth in Philadelphia. And that's all we found in the archives. There may be more, but it's not really digitized, so it's very hard to find things from 50 years ago.